All right, there we go. There, I got audio working. All right, so let's paint some Spawn. Question for you guys and gals there. Is the background music annoying? Is it too loud? Can you let me know what you're thinking? I gotta get logged in here. Should take me just a second. All right. Oh, good. It's fine. Thank you. Um, Something a little bit interesting when I'm super quiet while I'm painting. Let's see here. Okay, good. So I want to paint Spawn's head. Um, See, are you going painting from reference photos? That would be good to show. Kind of. So I've looked at a bunch of pictures, and I've kind of it's kind of my method of painting. So the question is am I painting from reference photos, or and if so, what is that reference photo? And the answer is yes and no. So I looked at a ton of pictures. I looked at both actually the box art, the way that Kemp or Dallas painted it. Looked at a bunch of comic references, and it's kind of weird. The way I paint is I paint my head like 50 times. So I've already painted his mouth, his tongue, several times in my head. Um, and now I'm going to actually do it with a brush in my hand. So it starts off as reference photos, but it ends up being like a little bit different than that. If that makes any sense, I don't know if that makes sense or not, but so the answer is kind of. So the other part of that answer is I don't have reference photos really to show you, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But all right, let's paint this tongue. Now, my goal with this tongue is I want it to be I want it to appear wet. So we're going to start off with some shocker, some scale colors. So we're going to start off with scale colors deep red. And I'm going to base coat it in the deep red. Get it nice and shook up. Alright. So there's some red for me. Actually, I will zoom in on the palette so you guys can see that a little bit better. So there's the red. And then let's take some flow improver. If you've seen me paint before, you know that I like to mix on the fly, so I don't just put down a dab of paint then thin it all down. I thin it as I go. And I'm going to base coat it here using this red grass 2. These red grass brushes are brushes they sent to me to look at, and I've been using them exclusively probably for, well, I don't know, 6-8 months now, and I don't see myself using anything else anytime soon, to be perfectly honest with you. I'm very, very happy with those brushes. All right, so here's Spawn, and we're going to do his tongue, and like I mentioned, I want it to have kind of a wet look. So let's thin down our red, and then I'll talk to you about how you get something to look wet. And believe it or not, it's very similar to making something look shiny. So the same techniques that I'm going to use for this tongue to make it look wet, I'm also going to use the same type of technique I would use to make it look shiny. All right, so let's base coat them. Get that nice red going. Now, just like with everything else, I'm not too worried about being super precise. Oh, I said Spawn. You're right. That is Venom. Ah, there is no Spawn. Look at me, doof. Ah, I gotta change all the names on it and everything. Isn't that funny? I don't know why I had Spawn in my head, not Venom. That's really funny. Oh, that's really funny. Talk about false advertising. Oh, that's funny. You know what it is? It's McFarlane. McFarlane's the artist that created both of them, both Venom and Spawn. Oh boy, how much did I regain any of my comic book cred by knowing that McFarlane created both of them? Oh, that's really funny to me. All right. Now, the other thing I was going to mention too is later on tonight, 8:30 on 8:30 Eastern, we're doing a live play role playing with Star Wars. So, Arcanist Lies. That's funny. So make sure that you come back and see that. All right. So we're getting him. Just getting the base coats down. I'm having a heck of a time keeping him stuck to this, and I don't know why. He keeps popping off, which is something that normally I don't see happening. Let's see if we can't fix that. So like I mentioned, with painting something to give it that wet effect, it's going to come down to contrast and very sharp highlights. And believe it or not, I want it to look somewhat. See how this is? Look, the paint's wet, right? And if I reflect it on that light, do you see how parts are white? And that gives it, that's how you can tell that the tongue is wet, literally because the paint is wet. And what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to simulate that with the, with the paints. Yeah, pretty ironic that Venom can't stick to something, right? Guess I had the same problem with Spider-Man. Speaking of which, you want to talk about something I'm excited about is Ghost Spider. When that comes out, the Spider-Gwen. That's supposed to be coming out pretty soon. I cannot wait to paint her. The sculpt that they put together on her is gorgeous. All right, so I'm happy with that base coat. So let's give it a second to dry, and let's bring in what our next color is going to be, which is going to be our kind of a shading. So I am going to shade it with this. It's a green. I'm not going to do it just with the green. I'm actually going to do it with red mixed with green, and here's why. You may have seen this on another one of my casts, but here's your color wheel. So up here, this is the reds that I'm working with right now. And if you mix something with its opposite color on the color wheel, in this case green, a dark green, what it'll do is it'll give you kind of an interesting color black. So we're going to take that red and mix it with this green, and you'll see what happens. So put a little bit of the green down there on the palette. And let's zoom out just a little bit so you can see it. I need a little bit of more flow improver. Now what I'm going to do is try to just give a little bit of interest to Spawn, right? To Venom. But the first thing I need to do is I need to kind of create that interesting color. So watch what I do here. I'm going to take a little bit a flow improver, mix it in with some of that red, get that nice and down, and I'm going to start adding green to it. And I want you to see what happens. You'll see that it starts to create like a dark gray. And it's a very interesting color because it's a mixture of the two. Far more interesting than just adding gray or black to darken the red. And then watch what happens on the model. So I want to get this underside. I want the center here to have that. Let's clean this brush off. Move this over here. Still getting used to having cameras all over the place when I'm painting. And everybody that has been patient with me through this process of learning how to stream while painting, I appreciate it. I'm really enjoying it. Alright, so I want kind of this middle area of the tongue. I want that darkened a bit. And again, I'm not being super precise because I'm going to be going back over this again later as I highlight. Right now, I'm just trying to create some of the initial contrast. There we go. All right. Let's bring in the next red. So the next step up from that deep red is we're going to go with blood red. Again, another scale, 75. Right. Came out real thick, so I'm going to just give it an initial thinning there. And now what we're going to do is try to leave behind some of the highlights. Try to get the lighting on this a little bit better here. Start to define this tongue a little bit more. But I want to leave some of that shading behind, obviously. Those you watching, you guys are all Malifaux players? Or any of you actually have tried Marvel Crisis Protocol? Here's something you'll see me do too sometimes is I won't paint with the tip of the brush. I'll catch edges using the side of the brush. So I'm going to get this left side of his tongue using the side of the brush. It's a good thing to get used to doing. You can be surprisingly precise if the sculpt is good by doing that. It's a way to get precision edge highlighting too. All right, starting to get a little bit of definition there, right? I think I want that red to go a little bit, the brighter red to go a little bit deeper here at the base of the tongue. So let's do that. And because I'm so thinned and my paint consistency, it means I'm going to have to go over it a few times. But it also means that I'm almost glazing this, which basically does my blending for me. Oh, so you've demoed Marvel Crisis Protocol. But But considering, or but playing foe, yeah. Obviously, you guys know I love Malifaux. Malifaux is and will always be my #1 game. But I gotta tell you that this has been a great second game for me. I've really enjoyed the game. I think respectfully, it took a lot of things from Malifaux. It's not nearly as deep or as intricate, which is why I don't think it'll ever be my main game. But it does what I think it was trying to do, which is to give a fun tabletop experience, and it feels like you are playing with superheroes, which I think is pretty awesome. And that starter box, you can get it at your local game store for like $99. You can get it online almost. I've seen it as cheap as like $75, and it comes with so much. It's, I think, one of the best deals in gaming right now. You get a lot for the money there. All right, so there was our next red. You can see how we're starting to get that definition in there. So let's keep going. You know what? I'm going to change holders. I'm getting annoyed that that's not sticking. And this is going to end up being an ad for Redgrass because I'm going to use their holder. Let's see if this is going to hold things better for me. You know, only thing I wish this holder had a stability bar, but it doesn't, but that's all right. It does tend to work a little bit better on these big base models. So... All right, so now starting to dry, and you'll notice with the scale 75, when you dry, it gets really nice and matte. Yeah, I agree, Jang Light. Your take is exactly mine, which is why, again, it can't be my main game, but boy, it's fun. But I don't see a world where it replaces Malifaux for me. All right. Again, you see, just going over it again with the glaze. All right, let's go next step. That's going to be the Antares red. So this guy. All these reds, by the way, are all available in the red set that Scale 75 puts out. I'm going to try to position this camera a little bit differently so you're not sitting there looking and staring at my fat face. There, that's a little bit better. At least you're not looking up my nose, for crying out loud. Here's my next red. I think I showed you the bottle, the Antares. Then after this red, we're going to push into whites and into yellows to really start getting the highlighting down. Now this, we're going to be far more judicial with. Because quite frankly, I mean, the way the tongue is now, I mean, pretty good shape already, right? So now this is where we start doing the small touches. This is where we start really selling the tongue. So I need to decide where I want to emphasize. Where do I want the eye, the viewer's eye, to really focus on? Where do I want this glossy, wet look to happen and feel? So the first place is going to be right when it comes out of the mouth here on these upper ridge areas. So let's go ahead and make those red. And right now I am not worried about blending this. I'm worried about defining it first. I'll blend later. I'll make it nice and pretty and smooth if I need to. Right now I've got to figure out where it's going to go. So that area there, I'm going to see a little bit here. Definitely some here. This top is going to get a lot of it. All right, so I've kind of picked out where my highlights for this red are going to be, which are ultimately where I'm going to sell the effect of this being a sloppy wet tongue. All right, and you can kind of see where that is. So now let's bring it up. And I'm going to bring it up using kind of a whitish yellow. This is the Tenaire Yellow, SC10 from Scale Color. Get it nice and thinned. And start bringing in some reds. And what I should end up with is like a whitish orange. All right. Now we're going to start selling this effect. So, all right. So another thing too I'll tell you about Scale 75 paints is when you initially put them down, they're much brighter than they end up when they're drying. So you have to be careful. I have gotten to the point where I put the color down and then I blend it later, which tells me a lot of times I avoid having to blend, and it prevents me from over blending, which is very nice. See, right now that contrast is too much for me, but I'm going to leave it to see if it stays that way after it dries. It's possible that it's going to dry exactly the way I want it to be. All right, our other spot that I mentioned was a little bit here. And here. And there. And there. Starting to build interest on that tongue. Now let's take that mix and add a little bit more red back into it. All right, so bring it down just a little bit. And then let's do some blending. Because we have it at a glazed consistency, it's just a matter of erasing the harsh transition with this mid color. Getting closer to that, starting to look like a wet tongue. Kind of like non-metallic metal. It's really not going to happen until it's done. When you're going for a wet effect or when you're going for non-metallic metals, it looks like ass until the last second, when all of a sudden it all comes together and just works. So let's smooth this out a little bit. So now I'm going to go back to the last red I was using before I added the whitish yellow. I'm going to kind of blend some of this in a little bit more. smooth out those transitions. And what I want to happen for my eyes, I want those transitions to disappear. Right? So I'm just going to kind of keep doing it until the harshness is gone. And I use the term erase, and that's really what it feels like. It feels like I'm erasing the harsh transition. There's surprisingly a lot of texture on this tongue. It's got all kinds of bumps, and I've seen some people paint the bumps with kind of a different color, kind of a greenish color, and I didn't care for it. All right, let's go back and get some highlights. I'm going to bring in a little bit more of that yellow, so it's going to give me kind of a brighter color. We're going to get smaller in our highlights. Almost getting close to just doing dots. Much like when I'm highlighting on non-metallic metals, it's these little highlights that give it the illusion of being shiny metal. It also is going to give it, in this case, the illusion of being a slobbering wet tongue. See how that's starting to work there? And where it'll really kind of sell is when I do the rest of the model, and the rest of the model has you know, a bit larger, smoother transitions. Though I'm thinking of doing a similar technique on his actual suit or skin too. I haven't decided yet. See, I started doing highlights here and I hate them, so I'm going to paint that over because it didn't come out the way I want. But I'm considering doing a very similar technique with grays and blacks to give kind of that shiny Spawn look. See what I end up deciding on. Mr. Venom. I guess McFarlane's most famous creation, I would say, as a creator is Venom, with Spawn being next. Created Venom, obviously, when he was at Marvel, and kind of redefined how people draw Spider-Man. And then when he left Marvel, of course, he made Spawn. I always liked the idea of Spawn. I never really cared for the comic that much. I always, you know what I always liked better? I liked, was it Lilo and Twitch, I think it was called? The spin-off comic that featured the two side characters, the police ones, the fat and the little one. And I thought that was a better comic. I have always felt that McFarlane was a better artist than he was an actual writer. I think he's an excellent creator, an excellent artist, but a meh writer. And I think that Spawn comics prove that. All right, so now, guys, I'm bringing back in the red to kind of clean up a little bit, making those transitions a little bit easier on the eye, but I don't want to do it too much because then we'll lose the wet effect. So it's a balance. There we go. Alright, so now I'm going to go straight yellow, this yellow-white. Yeah, the HBO series. Actually, I enjoyed the HBO series better than I did the comic. I thought the HBO series was actually better. I thought they did a little bit more interesting things with the characters. The McFarlane comics, I thought, a little one-dimensional, but the art was gorgeous. I mean, he changed the way people drew in comics. All right, I'm going for this final dot, and it is going to look like butt until I smooth it out. But before I can smooth it out, I got to get it on there. But that is what's going to make this thing look wet. So you see what I've done there? Now I've got to go back and smooth it out. Let's go back here where I've got more of that red mixed in. Make sure it's nice and thin. It's starting to look like how I wanted it to in my mind grapes. Yeah, I'm going to let this set. You know what? I think I need to do it here too. So I need another highlight to sell this, and I think it needs to be here. So let's add that in. We're just going to go back and repeat what we've been doing. That's what he needed. Just one more highlight to sell it. Let's grab just the pure yellow, create our dot. And then let's blend it back down again. One of the hardest things for me when I was learning how to paint, and by the way, I'm still learning how to paint, but one of the hardest things for me was learning how to control paint that is very thin. Brush control is something that you only get better at by practicing. But all kinds of things become a lot easier when you get better at controlling how paint comes off a brush. There. That is what I was looking at, or that's what I was going for in my head. It's kind of that wet look. Now I'm going to leave it here, and I am going to then go back and paint some more of the rest of the model, and then I might come back and revisit the tongue. But for now, I am pleased with that. All right, guys, I need to go spend some time with my wife and my kid, and then in about 2 hours, I'll be coming back on to do some Edge of Empire Star Wars role playing with 4 patrons. We're starting a brand new campaign. So those of you that stuck around and watched, I appreciate it. Take care.